My name is Deb from Just Do Something Homestead, and today we're doing a 2-for-1 meal. We are going to start with today's dinner, which will be meatloaf, and tomorrow's dinner will be spaghetti, but we're making the meat all at one time. You may be wondering, how are you going to make 2 different meals out of one recipe? Well, today I'm going to make meatloaf. This was my grandfather's recipe, and I still remember visiting his farm and having meatloaf for dinner. The trick with this recipe is tonight we are going to eat meatloaf, and then with the meatloaf that's left over, I'm going to cut it into squares. And tomorrow we are going to have spaghetti and squares. Oh, now that sounds good. For my meatloaf, I am going to have 1 pound of hamburger. Now this recipe is just for myself and Jim, so it is only for 2. If you are cooking for a family, you're going to want 2 pounds of hamburger. If you're cooking for a large family, you're going to want 3 pounds of hamburger. The other ingredients are things you probably already have on hand. I'm going to add some spices, eggs, barbecue sauce, milk, quick oats, and onions. We start by preheating the oven to 350. I'm going to use a 2-quart baking dish. This is a Pyrex dish. I do not use a loaf pan. I found this pan is more versatile. And also I want my meatloaf to be thin, and this will help it to cook faster. So I find a lot of benefits in using a baking dish instead of a loaf pan. I'm going to start by greasing my pan, and to do this, I just put it over my sink and spray it. When you put it over your sink, then all you have to do is clean up your sink instead of your countertop, your canning jars, and everything that was in the way. I have placed my baking dish into my sink, and now I'm just going to spray the pan. In my Pyrex bowl, I am going to put my 1 pound of hamburger. And we had a cow butchered, so we have our own hamburger on hand. The next ingredient is quick oats. Now this is the recipe that my grandfather always used, and Jim's like, I'm not sure people are going to enjoy this recipe. Let me tell you a secret. I don't eat yeast. In fact, I am allergic to yeast, and so I have had to learn to supplement things that may not be the common ingredient. And so I am going to add 1 cup of quick oats instead of breadcrumbs because I can't have breadcrumbs. So 1 cup of quick oats. Next is a tablespoon of dried onions. These are my own onions that I did this summer. And what I did is I dehydrated them and I store them in my quart canning jars, and then I can easily just add them to a recipe as I need them. This is 1 tablespoon. If you do not have dried onions like this, you can use fresh onions, but you're going to use more than dried ones. Dried ones tend to take in the moisture and they expand. So you may be using a half an onion at this point, but just judge by the size. The hard part for me with this meatloaf is I was going to show you the recipe for several weeks, but I tend to just dump in, well, oven's ready, dump in my ingredients without measuring it. So I had to get to the point where I knew exactly what the measurements were as I added them. My next ingredient is milk, and I am going to add 1/2 cup of milk. I do not like my meatloaf to be dry, so I put in 1/2 cup of milk, and it adds just the right moisture to this recipe. And talking about the milk, I also, when I talked about my oats, I think oatmeal adds just a perfect taste to meatloaf. So if you're a little hesitant to try it, I would encourage you to give it a try. I'm going to add 1/4 cup of barbecue sauce. I know often recipes call for ketchup. We prefer barbecue sauce in our family, so 1/4 cup barbecue sauce, and that is going to get mixed in. Again, I know people sometimes spread it on top. We mix it right on in. I'm going to add 1 extra large egg. I am still purchasing eggs because our chicks arrive in about 3 weeks. We have not had chicks yet on our new homestead since we've only been residents since January. So it's exciting at thinking about all these little chicks we're going to have soon. The last ingredients are the spices, and I'm going to start with garlic powder. And this is one of our favorite ones, so if you've been around for a while, you know we put garlic in everything. So a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Then I'm going to add a dash. I love these tiny little measuring spoons. This one simply says a dash, which is 1/8 teaspoon of paprika. So a dash of paprika. And this is a spice that I found down at the outlet store, and I picked it up and I really liked it. It's Nature's Seasons, but it's basically garlic, onion, and pepper. So I'm going to put in another dash, which is 1/8 teaspoon of the blend. You're going to stir these ingredients up until it's completely incorporated into the hamburger. Once it is all blended in very nicely, I'm going to add it to my baking dish. You're going to spread it all out. And lastly, I like to just push it on into the corners and around the outside with a basic fork. So it'll have a nice fork pattern on the top, but that gets it completely down into the pan. It looks like this, and we are now ready to put it in the oven. You're going to bake your meatloaf for 30 minutes. Our meatloaf is all finished. It baked for 30 minutes. As you can see, it's all bubbly around the outside and perfect. Because I baked it in a baking dish instead of a loaf pan, it only took a 1/2 hour to completely bake. So this is Jim and my dinner for tonight. We're going to have meatloaf with baked potatoes and a salad. And I usually either make baked potatoes or I make macaroni and cheese with my meatloaf. At this point, I am going to slice it down the middle, and we are going to use 1/2 of it as our meatloaf dinner tonight, and the other half is going to be our spaghetti and meat cubes. Let's take a look at this meatloaf. Ooh, let me hold it up so you can see it. It looks fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Truly, it is one of my favorite meals. Hello, everybody. Yesterday, I showed you a fantastic meatloaf dinner. It is one of my favorite 2-for-1 meals. Yesterday was meatloaf, but today is spaghetti and meat cubes. This meal will take you all of 10 minutes. So it is a perfect meal for a school night. The first thing you want to do is bring a big pot of water to a boil. While the water is heating up, I have a frying pan that I am also going to heat up, and it is cast iron. So I'm going to put this on the burner and get it nice and hot before I add the meat. I use organic when I can. Both of these things came from the outlet, and I was able to get angel hair pasta for 75 cents. Now, my pasta sauce is not organic, but for $1, I will use it. My cast iron pan is good and hot, so I am going to add olive oil. Typically I cook with butter, but for this meal I am just going to add a little bit of olive oil. The oil is starting to steam, so I turn the burner down. The pan is nice and hot, but now I turn down the burner to low, and I'm going to add my meatloaf cubes. At this point, I just want to brown them on each side, so I'm going to brown it and then flip it, and that is it. You do not want to cook them too long. They are fully cooked. You just want to heat them up without turning them to mush. I just flipped them once, and now I am going to pour the spaghetti sauce on top. At this point, I am going to cover and let simmer on low. My water is almost at a full boil. When it gets a little bit hotter, I am going to break this spaghetti in half and add it to the pan. One reason I really like the angel hair spaghetti is that it only takes 3 to 5 minutes to cook, so it is very quick, and typically I aim for 4 minutes. I just added the spaghetti to the pot, and I'm going to stir it up and cook for 4 minutes. With spaghetti, I like to continually stir it so it does not stick together. You can add oil, you can add a little salt, but I just have boiling water. 1 more minute on the spaghetti, and if we take a look at the sauce, you will see that it has cooked. Now, one of the things I don't add spices at this point because we had already added it to our meatloaf. The spaghetti is done. I'm going to drain it over by the sink. And like that, our 2-for-1 meal is finished. So we have spaghetti and meat cubes. I'm going to add some fresh mozzarella. And I buy our mozzarella in bulk, so I keep it in the freezer. And then I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of oregano leaves. All right, that meal took less than 10 minutes to make because we had done the bulk of the cooking the night before. If you enjoyed this 2-for-1 meal, please like, subscribe, and share, and have a great day. Bye-bye.